It's the show of the week.
Hello! Welcome to the Patreon live stream show of the month. Today we're going to talk about company. As we wait for some more people to roll in, this is the part where I plug Patreon. Patreon is an online supporting platform. If you like this channel, if you like the things that happen on it, if you're watching the supercut of this video in the future, you can watch these things live. Just click that, go to my Patreon, and it'll explain the rest. It's really straightforward. Company. Let's talk about company. Sondheim September has passed, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about him anymore. So Company came out in 1970. It revolutionized the musical theater landscape. It's not the first concept musical that goes to, that honor often is given to Fiorello. With the exclamation point, Fiorello. That's Sheldon Harnick and Jerry Bach and Harnick, who are great. They did Fiddler, too. But Company might be the first concept musical that people got behind. It was nominated for, like, 14 Tony Awards. Do I have that right? Yeah, 14 Tony Awards, and it won 6. And being nominated for 14 Tony Awards was a record at that time. No musical had ever been nominated for that many awards before, and very well deserved. So what makes a concept musical? Nowadays, almost every musical has some aspect of that umbrella term of concept musical in it. Musicals are no longer just purely about a plot. They're much more about ideas and feelings and those kind of ethereal qualities that you're trying to evoke in a certain way, because that's what you can do with a musical, right? It's not just because there is a greater suspension of disbelief because we're watching people sing on stage and break out into song for no apparent reason. You have that room to develop those concepts and kind of promote those kind of difficult to describe things. And Company was the first to do it in a lot of ways, for sure. Sondheim jokes about it in, is it Finishing the Hat? Where he says, an unmarried man on his 35th birthday analyzes his life by reminiscing on his experience with a bunch of married couples. That's the entire plot. Like, that's the joke. There's not much plot to this. There's not much story to this. It's interesting. And so it is a musical about an idea, it is a musical about a feeling, and those ideas and feelings, every bit of analysis I read from other people about Company has a different opinion about what those feelings are and what Sondheim and Furth are trying to say with this show, which is one of the things that makes it so interesting. So Company started out as a series of vignettes, almost. George Furth had written, it was like 16 or 11 one-act plays that were all kind of basically the couples you see in Company, and then after showing them to Sondheim and asking for advice from Hal Prince, they turned it into Company, the musical we know and love today. And so I've noticed if you listen to the podcast, Jimi and I talked about this in the Guys and Dolls one, but a lot of revolutionary musicals are revolutionary by accident. Guys and Dolls having a very integrated book and score happened because the original book writer dropped out, and so the score was already written, and then they needed to write a book around it. And it seems intentional when you look at it, just fresh on stage without knowing the backstory, but the reason it has an integrated music, the reason it is an integrated musical is because of the way it's written. Same thing with Company. The reason this is a concept, amorphous, vaguely non-linear piece is because it started off as a series of disconnected straight play vignettes. And then they just ran with it. It was experimental at the time. Oh, okay, so this is why Company is a fabulous title for the show. During the park scene, when Bobby is talking to one of his girlfriends, and she's talking about her roommate, and Bobby's not invited over to the apartment. She'd love to show it, but they've never had company. And we're introducing a new definition of the phrase company, beyond just the person to be with, beyond just the, your life partner or whatever. We're also talking company in Bobby's sense of giving company to these couples. He is the company they invite over. And this is a very separate company than they've teased you with in the very first song of the show. We're not just talking about finding someone to marry, finding someone to be with the rest of your life. We're also finding with someone to be with your marriage, which is the point, the section Bobby has sat in forever. And so I think it is the balance of those two definitions of company, the interplay between those two things, that is the concept of this musical. We're looking at what is company. There's this implication that as human beings we are destined to try and find our company in the world, our other human to be with, but then what role do they fill? Are they the person you marry? Are they the person you divorce? How long before? What is it that makes that company? Yeah, that made some sense in my mind, I guess. At the beginning of "Marry Me a Little," before the song starts and the scene they have on the cast recording, when Amy's freaking out about her wedding, and Bobby's has this idea to propose to her. He has these two lines, "Marry me, marry me." In the script, same line, but the tiny, subtle difference in inflection he uses. The first one, the focus is, "Marry me, marry me. Don't marry him, marry me." But then he thinks about it for just a beat more, and the next time it comes around, it's now, "Marry me." It is no longer marry me instead of him. It is now marry me. Do this very important, make this very important step. The focus suddenly becomes around marriage. You see this in a little more overt ways. Amy just a couple lines later, and then at the end of the show, maybe at the end of the show? I guess I don't remember. You have to want somebody, not just somebody, which is another wonderful use of inflection and subtext to tell you the difference between those two lines. You have to want somebody, a person who is important and full and complete and all these things you need, not just somebody, not just any old, thing that fits the shape of this concept that you're trying to fill. Man, it is hard to talk about this musical because it is so amorphous and deals with things that are difficult to describe outside of the context of the show. It's really, my question is, I guess, what is the most productive interpretation of the ending of Company, right? So this whole musical, we've been watching Bobby struggle with his concept of relationships, not even just marriage, just relationships, both between him and someone to be with the rest of his life and him and the couples he sees around him. And it's all metaphorically implied by his ongoing birthday wish. I don't think they do it in all the productions. It's hard to see, but the intent is that at the beginning of the show, Bobby is unable to blow out all of the candles on his birthday cake. And then at the beginning of Act 2, he can only blow out some of them. And then at the end, he blows out his candles once everyone's gone. And so the implication is, what is Bobby wishing for, and does he get it? He says at the beginning he didn't wish for anything, which I saw written down incorrectly somewhere. Not that he didn't wish for anything, but that he wished for nothing, which is an interesting turn of phrase and got me thinking. Like, by the end of it, the implication is that he misses or ditches out or doesn't want to see any of these people at his surprise birthday party. And he ends the show for the first time on stage alone. It's not being alive with all these people behind him telling all these different things, especially in the 2000 and blah production, 2006 production. It's the first time when all of the supporting cast leaves stage and just leaves him alone on stage, which in a show called Company, you're saying something really big when you're putting your protagonist alone on stage. And so I guess maybe lonely and hopeful aren't opposites. You know, there's a hopefulness to being alone. We see Bobby with all these chances to be with people, and he doesn't end up with anyone in the end. And there isn't really a strong implication either way, that he's going to find someone or not going to find someone. I don't know. I guess it would be fun, if I ever do Company, to leave out like ballots at the end and like 2 big check boxes. Does Bobby find love, or does Bobby remain a bachelor the rest of his life? And I think both are interesting, valid choices that create different pieces of artwork. I've talked about different Bobbies. What about Joanne's? Patty versus Elaine versus Barbara Walsh. I haven't talked about this, JoJo, yet, but that is a fabulous question. I think that is a hard question. It's between Patty and Elaine for me. Patti LuPone certainly sings it better, not better. Patti LuPone certainly sings the song as written more accurately, and you know, the notes and the inflection. Elaine Stritch is famous for just making things up, but I think so much of Joanne's character is just Elaine Stritch, that it is hard. I'm normally in the camp of not putting so much of the original characterization on the original actor. I make an exception, I think, for Elaine Stritch and Company, because this is clearly so much her personality. Like, she gets that character so deeply and wonderfully, whereas Patti LuPone gets that character, but also is a versatile actress, and I think puts a different spin on it. I think I'd probably have to go with Elaine Stritch, even in spite of her very loose interpretation of the song. Man, she also is just so passionate about it. If you ever have a chance to watch even just her section of the cast recording documentary, watching her, so they had been recording all night, if you haven't seen it, and hers was one of the last songs they were going to record, Ladies Who Lunch, and you know, it was 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and it is a high, difficult to sing song, and Stritch was just struggling with it so much, and you can just see it in her, like her hair is straight up because she keeps like running her hands through it. There's one segment where they're listening to one of the takes of it, and she just gets so lividly angry at her past self and just starts yelling back at the recording. Like, one, you see Elaine Stritch's passion in everything, but also you see very specifically how much she cares about getting this role right. And so they cut for the night. They just record the backing track, the orchestra. Elaine's going to come in tomorrow or whenever and try again when her voice feels better. And it's like right before matinee, she comes in with her makeup on, ready to go on stage right when they're done. And in like maybe one take, she just knocks it out of the park. And it is a whole new light. It is just an entirely different performance. And it's really moving to see a performer put their entire being into singing a song. And especially in a world where, you know, it's just a sound recording. She doesn't need to be acting. She doesn't need to be performing it. But just to see that commitment, that wonderful energy, yeah, probably Elaine Stritch. As always, thank you again to all of you lovely Patreon people on Patreon. If you're watching this in the future, You can watch these live streams live by clicking that link, going to Patreon, making a pledge. It's only $1 a month. It helps me out so much. Things like putting food on my table and paying rent. It's great. Plug done. Thank you all for coming. This month for me in real life is pretty busy. I'm recently employed. I just got a new job teaching wonderful high schoolers about theater. It's a brand new program too, so it's just a lot of work to start out, but I'm still here, I promise. Have a great time. I forgot to click my outro song. Hopefully it's playing. I hope you all enjoyed. I think you're all lovely people. Have a great, what is today? Saturday? Have a great Saturday. This was a great show of the month. And I'll see you next time. Take care. Be nice to each other. Bye.